Marlene, how are you?
So good, thank God. How are you?
It's uh, it's really such a pleasure seeing you because we didn't have many events, and every time you come to our events or to our Friday nights, it's really uplifting us. Your presence always a present for us. So, um, and what you do personally really moves me, and that's why I want to share your story with many of our students and alumni. And I think that our community at large should know who you are, what you do, and most importantly, why. So please share your story.
Okay. Um, so yeah, my name is Marlene. I am a RAJE alumni, but I would also love to go back as soon as the shul opens and when we can have gatherings again and come back to the classes. I currently work for the Zionist Organization of America. I work in their campus department as their tri-state campus coordinator, but I'm also currently looking over the Midwest region as well. So a lot of ground to cover, thank God. And then my story, well, I guess my story starts with, like everyone's story, with my parents. So my parents were born in what was then the Soviet Union, but modern day Ukraine. They moved to America in 1992. So I grew up in a pretty stereotypical Russian Jewish home, very secular. And I think in general, the Jewish identity is something that is very, very unique in the sense of that Soviet Jewry is overwhelmingly secular and yet overwhelmingly identifies with this Jewish identity. So I definitely had a strong Jewish identity, but I had no idea what it meant to be Jewish. And I didn't feel like it was important for me to know what it was to be Jewish until I went to college. So I went to New York University. I graduated over a year ago now. And that was the first time that I really did feel attacked as a Jew. So for me, until that point, my Jewish identity was never the prime focus. It became the prime focus when others started pointing it out, that because I'm Jewish, this must be true, or different forms of anti-Semitism. So then I realized that if other people were noticing it so much, I needed to explore for myself, what does that mean to be a Jew? What is that? And that's actually where my Zionism comes from, because sure, did I support Israel? Yeah, maybe yes, maybe no, kind of unclear. I did Birthright, but did I go because I love Israel? No, I went on Birthright because I thought it'd be a big party. But that really changed over my 4 years at college and during my time at RAJE, because once I had a deeper understanding of what it means to be Jewish, I understand that as an individual, I'm part of a bigger collective. I'm part of this Jewish people and this Jewish tribe. And if we're a people and we're a tribe, that means we come from a place, right? We come from a land. And so building that connection with the people and with the community is actually what drove my Zionism to where it is today. This understanding that as a people, we deserve a home and we need a home, and that as a Jew, I have an obligation to make that clear and known and fight for it. And that home is Israel. It's Israel, it's Judea, it's Samaria, it's Jerusalem, it's all of it.
Thank you. I remember that you actually not only were attacked, but you also stood up to the attackers and you were running events and demonstration in support of Israel in a very hostile environment of NYU. Unfortunately, it's so hostile that one of my very good friends, a professor of psychology at that place, said to me, I'm really scared to go. I'm really scared. And I asked her, is it because of, Palestinians or Muslims? And she said, absolutely not, because of the Jews. And I was really shocked. She said, because some most outspoken enemies of Israel, unfortunately, our own brothers and sisters who kind of were brainwashed. Is that true? That you feel the same?
I would definitely, I wouldn't put that sentiment to the side. I think that, I mean, both during my time at NYU and now, even as a professional, I think I agree that there is this idea that, oh, campuses are so hostile and they're so terrible and there's all this anti-Semitism. And while there is definitely truth to that, I wouldn't say that that is the biggest challenge. I think and I wouldn't even say the biggest challenge is those that oppose us and even Jews that disagree with this connection to Israel. I think that overall, the biggest enemy is just the complacency. The biggest challenge that I see is really trying to empower Jews, for them to feel like I do, in the sense that we have some kind of obligation to talk about our Judaism, to take it seriously, but to talk about Israel as well, that there isn't this. And while on a surface level, everyone would agree, okay, there's a connection between Judaism and Zionism and Jews and Israel, sure. But the most challenging part is to really make students feel like they have some kind of obligation as an individual to support this collective of the Jewish people and the Jewish state. So I think that's the biggest challenge. It isn't even the Jews that oppose us. It's this feeling that someone else can take care of it, that like I can just be complacent on my campus, in my shul, in my community. I can just sit back and someone else will do it. And I think that complacency and this lack of intellectual curiosity and drive, I would say that is the biggest enemy of students on campus.
That was actually the biggest enemy of all times. Even
agree.
the golden calf, the sin of the golden calf, our rabbi said, was not that some few thousand people went to serve an idol. The problem was the complacency of everybody else. So I wanted to ask you, Anita, one of our friends actually, Anita, asking you a question as we speak, because people sending questions.
Wow, thank you.
I want to thank you, Anita. A wonderful question she's asking. Actually, the one that I wanted to ask you. And why did you join RAJE?
Yes, that's a great question. I get asked it a lot. So I went to, without naming any names, I went to a few different organizations before I joined RAJE, on campus, off campus, whatever. And I firmly believe that Soviet Jewry, which I definitely consider myself part of, anyone with parents who lived in the Soviet Union that themselves are born in the Soviet Union, I think Soviet Jewry is so extremely unique. And for people that are not a part of it, it is so hard to understand. So for me, thank God I was born in this country. I wasn't born under Lenin or Stalin rule, but my grandparents were. My parents lived under that. And so for me, the stories that I grew up with, it's this idea that they, on one side, they weren't allowed to be Jewish, but on the other side, they weren't allowed to forget that they were Jewish. And that creates I call it a very unique flavor of trauma, a very unique flavor of diaspora, that for people that are outside of this community, it's very hard to understand, because and obviously I'm generalizing it, but for most Russian Jews, it's so important to be Jewish without really understanding what that even means. And so RAJE was able to give an outlet where they were able to explain what that means in a way that connected with this Soviet Jewish identity. And I think that other organizations didn't hit the nail on the head the way that RAJE was able to.
You know, many years ago, we used to say, in order to represent the Jewish people, you need to know what do Jewish people represent.
Absolutely.
Exactly that. I have to tell you, I am really so inspired to see you, a student, becoming a leader, because we're reaching out to college campuses, to young people, and now you do exactly the same. Can you tell me, first of all, why did you go to this wonderful organization, ZOA, Zionist Organization of America, and what do you do there?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer the second question first. So I currently work in the ZOA campus department. So my job and my mission, both of the organization and of myself personally, is to empower both Jewish and even non-Jewish students on campus to be proud Zionists, to be able to reclaim their narratives, to feel like they have the resources, the support, the skill set, the knowledge to really defend their beliefs, be that fighting anti-Semitism on campus, be that actively defending the state of Israel, opposing BDS on campus. So my job is to empower these students, educate these students, and basically take what I did when I was on campus and be able to empower them to do the same. And there are many reasons why I joined ZOA. I think one is I remember, especially in my undergraduate early years, freshman, sophomore year, just being so lost, unsure. What do I say to professors? What do I say to administrators? How do I do what I want to do? And looking for some kind of guidance. So I think that part part of me really wants to pay it forward and be something for students that I maybe as a student didn't really feel that I had, especially early on in my education, in my college years. And I think the other reason is I as an individual really feel like I have an obligation to, so obviously we have this term Kiddush Hashem, and I really feel like I take it so seriously. Like, it's really my job to be, I am an Orthodox, maybe modern Orthodox, whatever label is, an Orthodox Jew in this field on secular campuses, sharing my vision, sharing my mission, sharing about Israel. And that to me is so important. The amount of times that I meet someone that say, I've never met a Jew before, I've never heard this before, I can't even point to Israel on a map. And the fact that I'm able to be their first interaction and be a positive interaction and inspire a Jewish student, a not Jewish student, change someone's mind, that to me is one of the most fulfilling feelings.
It is so fulfilling for me to see you doing this, first of all, I would love you please to come not only to different campuses, but actually come back to our own campus at RAJE and inspire our own students. Please do so. We need you. And I think we need you more than just once. We need you maybe as a course about Zionism, maybe our connection to ZOA. You come to places, and I don't need to tell you what's going on in the world and all the riots and how they, supposedly very tolerant people, how intolerant when they become when there's an alternative opinion that they don't want to tolerate in any way, and they meet with violence, and you go to these places. I think you are a hero. It's so significant that we're talking today, basically on the eve of September 11th.
I mean, those are really inspiring words. I think, yeah, September 11th is definitely a monumental moment. And I mean, if we're bringing it up, I definitely want to take a second and say thank you to all of our first responders that were there, to our city, the way that we handled it. I was obviously very young when we happened, but I think the theme never forget is really what resonates with me. So I was only in kindergarten when it happened, but I remember being pulled from school and getting picked up by my grandma and my mom running home. But for example, I have a younger brother and he was born after September 11th. And I mean, I can experiment after this call and I can ask if he even knows what it is. So we're actually coming into, even now I work with college students that are sometimes 5-6 years younger than I am, and they already didn't live through September 11th. They already weren't there. And so we're coming to this era of people that forget, right? And if we think about, not to try and make any comparisons, but just going on this theme of never forget, if we think about all the really tragic events that happened in Jewish history, right? The Holocaust, we're moving further and further away. Holocaust survivors, the ones we have left, are unfortunately passing away. And there are so many anti-Semitic incidents, one after another. We're moving further from the shooting in Pittsburgh. Just the other day, we had a Chabad house burned in Delaware, and every event is moving further and further away. And so I think the theme never forget is what I think about a lot, that it's important to never forget 9/11 and the people that perished and the travesty that happened in the city that I grew up in, that I really do call home. I was born and raised in New York City, but it's important to never forget the tragedies that happened to us as a people as well, and move forward from them.
As we know, that the nation that doesn't remember its past will be forced to repeat it. So if we treasure our memories, I hope that will be safe and secure. And we hope, of course, that Israel will be safe and secure. And maybe it's my last, but I believe maybe some most important question. Many RAJEs are viewing this broadcast, and many more we'll see over time. I'm sure it will be thousands of people viewing it. And your example is example of activism. You said that the biggest problem is people don't care, complacency. People just live their lives thinking about themselves. And it's dangerous for us as a nation because everybody thinks about themselves. We're not united. And in order for us to be really strong, we need activists, we need activism. So people will say, I don't know what to do. So how would you answer that question if you want to inspire people to actually act?
So the first thing is obviously reach out to me on Facebook, on email, by phone. Please, I'm always happy to have these conversations. I think activism happens in many, many forms, in education, in media, in person. And so definitely it's important to find an outlet that works best for every individual to use their skill set. So step one, please reach out to me. Really, I'm so open to any questions and comments. Other than that, ZOA thankfully has many resources, be it on campus through national or young professionals. We have webinars that we host, events that we host, which obviously happening less given this pandemic. But there are many ways to get involved through ZOA as well. So check out our website, check out our campus website. If you are a college student on campus, there are even more ways to get involved. There are your local organizations on campus. Chances are ZOA already works with all of them and partners with all of them. So really being involved on campus is actually, I would say, much easier than being involved off campus in your workplace, so on and so forth. But really, if there are any questions, reach out to me, look at our website. But I think there are so many opportunities, be it through social media, in person, whatever it is. Even just educating yourself can be a form of activism for sure.
So we call this interview From RAJE to ZOA. So I think a combination of two creates a wonderful bridge that people can walk through, both on education and in political activity. And knowing people like you makes this place especially attractive and wonderful. So I want to thank you so much, and looking forward to seeing you in person with many of our RAJE rabbis, educators, and most importantly, students and alumni. Yes. Looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Rabbi.